Little hands make light work when conservation starts at home. Join us for a great conversation.
Welcome to the Ascend Podcast, a podcast by and for women in the outdoors. Every episode delivers real stories, practical how-tos, and a welcoming community to help you start, sharpen, or rediscover your passion for the outdoors. Authentic women, real stories, outdoor adventures, Ascend. Presented by Ducks Unlimited, the leader in wetlands conservation. Your next adventure starts here, the Ascend Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host today, Bethany Beathard, and joining me today is a fellow mom in the outdoors, conservation advocate, Amy Hall. Can you please give our viewers introduction about yourself and tell us how you got started in the outdoors?
Yeah, sure. My name is Amy Hall, and I'm from kind of the Middle Tennessee area. I got started in the outdoors. I guess you could say I grew up fishing and camping and hiking and that kind of thing. And then probably in my early 30s, I started hunting. So it was later in life when deer hunting kind of jumped into my realm of things I wanted to try and wanted to do. And then that was closely followed by duck hunting and goose hunting. And then it moved into turkey hunting. And so it's just, I've loved doing a little bit of everything now. But fishing, I think, was like, it was the Kickstarter of that kind of lifestyle, fishing and camping. But yeah, I have worked in the conservation world for the Tennessee Wildlife Federation, so working for an NGO for the state of Tennessee, and then I work right now for Hook and Barrel magazine, which of course is, as we like to call it, the redneck GQ of the lifestyle, hunting, fishing, off-roading, whatever, but we intertwine music and food and a whole bunch of other things. So it's kind of a fun way of reaching out to people who might not have thought about hunting before or shooting sports or anything like that. So it's kind of a mission in itself.
Yeah, I love hearing stories about how women got into the outdoors because, yours was fishing, and you just never know what's going to be that
Mm-hmm.
catalyst to kickstart it. And I'm like you. I'm like, whatever's the next season, I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to grow. My family weren't big bird hunters growing up, and I think that's probably what I hunt the most now is turkeys and ducks. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just really exciting to see how the journey, the outdoors always has something to offer. You can always grow. You can always learn, challenge yourself. Yeah, it's really awesome. I love that. Um, and Hook and Barrel, obviously, I write for them too. I
Mm-hmm.
do contribute, but I love, just talking about that for a second because I feel like something that Hook and Barrel does is also highlight people that are in the public eye that kind of have this private outdoor life that sometimes people don't see. And then they're like, oh, I love their music. And it does really reach, maybe a non-hunter that might never hunt, but kind of turn them into
Mm-hmm.
that hunting supporter on the conservation side that they believe in management. They support people in that life and also love their music. So I really like that connection. And I feel like Hook and Barrel's doing that well. It's kind of connecting the maybe hunting supporter, but non-hunter
Yeah, I
to
agree. I think that there's not enough of that in this world. It's not that we're trying to convert people, I think, across the whole community. We're not trying to convert people to pulling a trigger on an animal. It's just creating a community where we might understand each other a little bit more, or we might just support each other a little bit more. I've had conversations with women that don't even have a desire to get out in the woods, or even men who don't have a desire to get out in the woods, but they're supporting their significant other or their kid or their parent or somebody that they have a connection to, and they've learned about it and now they want to support them. They want to hear about the stories or they want to celebrate with the successes. So it's just creating community.
Yeah, it's the lifestyle because I think
Mhm.
something that has been damaging about social media in a way is harvest, harvest, harvest. So showing kind of the lifestyle behind it really brings a refreshing angle and can, I think, really re-engage those people but that might have stopped supporting hunting because all they seen
Mhm.
was harvest, harvest, harvest. And now they're seeing like, oh, it's this lifestyle, it's country, it can be kind of chic in a way, I really
Mhm.
love that
Yeah.
about that. So I really want to talk about let's talk just like basics. When you hear conservation at home, what does that really mean for a family?
Um, you know, starting out with littles. So my kids, I've got a daughter who's about to graduate high school. So starting out when they were little, it didn't look like taking them out on a hunt. It didn't necessarily even look like taking them fishing in the beginning. It looked like taking a walk around our house, learning about what tracks were and what scat was. I think that it was really fun when my daughter ran up. I think she was third grade, maybe not even third grade. It was in between first and second. She goes, "We just found a river otter latrine site. Did you know they only go in the bathroom one place in the whole area where they live?" And so it's going on hikes and learning what kind of vine is that? Is that a vine that's going to make you itchy later? Or is it a vine that's great to look at? What do you not eat? What can you eat? So it just look at those fall colors. Why do the leaves change in the fall? So I think that it's kind of like anything that you're teaching your kids in life, you take it with baby steps on how they can handle that information coming in. Let's just go on a walk and learn about our surroundings here. And then as they grow, how can you be involved? Even as little as 3 and 4, you can be walking and you pick up trash. Like those are just the little bitty things that you start when they're tiny and you're implementing the responsibility that we have as human beings to our country, to our world, to the communities that we like to take advantage of and be in the outdoors in. So that's kind of how I introduced my kids to the outdoor world and to our community was just little baby steps at a time of responsibility. I think we throw the word conservation out so much now, but truly it could go back to the basic of this is your responsibility.
Yeah, and I've noticed that kids tend to follow more what we do than what we say, and really
Yes.
getting them outdoors, touching the things, noticing the things,
Mhm.
something I love is to see just the, um, amplification of moms sharing their journey outdoors with their kids. Like, they're actually
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, we're out here." I mean, even dads are doing it. You see in the world I feel like there's a shift too in social media showing more of, like, the family
Mhm.
hunting, the family, they always, more highlight on getting youth in the outdoors. Um, yeah, I 100% agree what you said. It could be something so simple. Picking up trash is something that I love to do with my kids. It's an initiative that we've always got behind, and
Mhm.
we've actually found some pretty cool stuff. Just we hunt a military base, and they will find like old military tent stakes, or we actually found a ketchup bottle in a river, that was low, or it was like a creek, I guess, in Oklahoma, and it, like, dated back to, like, 1940. So it was like but it was just we
Uh-huh.
thought it was trash, and we picked it up, and it was neat, and so, yeah, teaching them the simple things of tracks and stuff, that's just a lot of people don't know that. Like, we're losing a
Mhm.
disconnection. There's probably a lot of adults that cannot tell you, the difference between certain tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, between a dog track or a cat track or a coyote or because there are very, very clear distinctions. I think we had a lot of raccoon and otter tracks. So being able to tell the difference between that, being able to see, when a leaf falls, what kind of tree did this go to? Does it have acorns? Does it have seed pods? What type of wildlife will be using this? How, if it decays, does it help with the growth of the forest? How? So you start with that. And as hunters, that leads into further conversations as they grow into it. Okay, we're looking at tracks. Which way are they going? Which direction are they going in? Are they heavier prints because it rained recently, or are they heavier prints because it was a heavier animal, like a bigger deer? So you're getting to learn along the way, and it just builds upon itself. I think that my kids were, oh, I'm going to date myself just a little bit. I bet they were. I think my son, it was before kindergarten when I got my first deer. And they had never seen the cleaning process. So going through and getting an animal and prepping it for butchering and processing I thought, well, this is a great way for them to learn and to respect and see the process, because I had a rule: you can't hunt until you go through the process with somebody else from start to finish. And I think that was the responsibility that I felt for preparing them for taking a life, because it is a serious thing and it's not one to take lightly. So it was something that, again, built upon them becoming stewards of this earth and not just takers.
Yeah, and, I think the kids it changed them whenever my kids started
Mhm.
seeing that process of, harvesting. We would have the meat in the freezer and, mom would have this picture, but whenever they got to actually put their hands on it, and they were
Yeah.
like, "Well, what's this? What's this?" And they really had a lot of questions, they were curious, it sparked so many good conversations, and
Mhm.
I feel like that's how we instill the love for conservation early on.
Mhm.
We do this not only because it feeds our family, but there's other reasons. There's herd management. There's, all these other things that
Mhm.
you can talk to them about. Um, and I really feel like, if we go back just a couple decades ago, a lot of kids seen a lot of that because they were harvesting. I talked to my
Yeah.
husband's his grandma, and she'll talk about always seeing like animals harvested, and and I thought she literally grew up like out in the woods, and I was like, "How many acres does your family have?" And she was like, "Oh, we grew up in town. We just had a corner lot." And I was like, "Oh, well, you say you had, like, an orchard." She was like, "Yeah, because we didn't really have yards back then. It was gardens and chicken coops," and
Mhm.
she's like, and she's always talked about she remembered different times that they would go into the woods and harvest, mulberries and rhubarb and all these things that were growing wildly in their area, and I was like, "That's so far disconnected to where we are today."
It
It's just
is.
so interesting to see.
It is. It very
Yeah.
much so is. I love the part. I think my daughter did a 3rd grade paper on why I hunt, and the teacher said I was expecting something totally different, and she went into herd management and CWD and, like, just went into the whole
I
scientific
love
side of
that.
conservation and why we do what we do. It's not just to put food on our tables, there are other reasons for it. She said it was very enlightening, but I remember growing up, and there was I guess, a project that one of my classmates did on how to castrate a bull. We don't have that much anymore in school, and
Yeah.
so, um, if you have FFA in your schools, my son has FFA, he's heavily involved in it, so he's learning. There are cows and chickens and goats and sheep and all sorts of small animals on campus that they're learning from, but not every school has that, and so I miss those opportunities that our children have in learning a different side, not just the, um I don't know. I don't think I ever heard the word conservation applied to anything else other than wildlife habitat. Truly.
Yes.
I think conservation wasn't a word used outside of that community.
I feel like it was almost intimidating, like,
Mhm.
even, like, as a mom, when I really started getting into hunting and, like you said, I felt detached really from conservation, like, that's kinda what, like, the wildlife department does, like, I can't really
Mhm.
play other than buying a license, Um, and, we're stretched thin as moms, we're doing all the things, but really there's so many tangible ways that you can incorporate this, the big word conservation in your life. Um, and it's really not like you said, it's as simple as teaching your kids about tracks, picking up trash, teaching
Yeah.
them, all the diseases that go around and all the things. Um, and even like the story of like the buffalo, they were almost hunted to extinction. And we lived in Oklahoma, so that was something that was really real for us
Yeah.
because we actually lived in Lawton, Fort Sill area, the Wichita mountain range, and that herd is the herd that, like, birthed all the buffalo that we have now. Like, they moved them there for that purpose. There was only, like, 11 buffalo left in America,
Mhm.
and now, like, there's some of the most beautiful buffalo, and they have a big buffalo drive where they get them all together, and then they sell them off to different, refuges and all this stuff and, Indian reservations, and it's just really interesting to see you know, because, my kids were from Oklahoma, so you're like, "Oh, yeah, you see a buffalo all the time," but then they go to the museum and they see, like, the pile of skulls, and they're like, "Wait, what happened?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, there can be a hurtful side to
Mhm.
overharvesting as well." Um, and even, like, waterfowl, you look at, like, photos from, like, the 1920s, you'll
Yes.
see, like, 100 ducks, like and the low country, like, the plantations the rice plantations left unkept turned into, like, this waterfowl mecca of the day, and,
Mhm.
they were, like, by 9, 100, like, literally stacks and stacks, and I'm just like, it's just unfathomable, it's like, who is eating all this, like, how what did this
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
cannot eat that many
No,
ducks.
it's true. We didn't
Yeah,
have when I was growing up, Tennessee didn't have turkeys.
yeah,
I don't remember seeing a turkey growing up in Tennessee, and it was a reintroduction over time. Same with elk. We now have elk in
yeah,
East Tennessee and all through North Carolina and Kentucky and all of the it's that reintroduction, but without the
yeah,
responsibility of the states and the agencies that are putting that together and creating a habitat for them in a place where they can survive and not just survive but thrive, that's when you see these numbers come up. And the funding from that comes from hunters and competitive shooters and the people who are giving back by purchasing, and we have the Pittman Ross dollars that are able to support these these ways of bringing the numbers back to where they need to be.
yeah, that really triggers the monarch butterflies migrate through Oklahoma, and I remember
Yeah.
seeing just tons of them, and you don't really see as many
Mm-mm.
anymore. And now there's places in Oklahoma that they're dedicating like non-mowing spaces with the sign that's like a monarch sanctuary.
Mhm.
And, that would not even be put into place if people weren't being intentional because not everybody like, oh, there's less butterflies flying around, that's so,
Yeah.
but there's people paying attention that care. And, that's as simple as making a little pollinator area, a bee little hive, all those things, building birdhouses with your kids,
Yeah.
nesting boxes. Like the boys love that, I mean, even my girls do. And I think it just what we're getting to is it can be simple and we don't
It
have to
could be very
overcomplicate it.
simple. I think I saw signs out in my area, no mow May. So for the whole month of May, nobody mowed. And
Yeah.
and it was to allow for babies to be born and for the wildlife to be able to utilize that time to move through at that point. You've got a lot of flowers that are coming through. You can plant things that you wouldn't normally see if you're mowing your grass.
Mhm.
Um, you hear, "Well, don't plant the grass, leave the clover." leave the weeds, I say with
Yeah.
quotation marks, leave the weeds because those can definitely be places where bumblebees, honeybees, things that come in and then cross-pollinate and move it out. So, there are so many little bitty things that you can do. You can live in the city and still help with that kind of thing and have those conversations. You don't have to live in the country or parts of the county where you can have more access to land. You don't have to have that. You can just support your local public grounds and be a voice to allow for those habitats to stay around a little bit longer for butterflies to come through. Plant a butterfly bush to help with it. We've got
Yes.
4 out front and I don't live on 60 acres, but I can
Yeah.
have we have tons of butterflies and honeybees that come through every year for those, and it's just little bitty things that you can do.
And I don't really think that we notice, especially as like, Tennessee, Oklahoma, those really, I feel like wildlife rich areas notice as much whenever there's no wildlife. So we lived in Hawaii for a little bit and they literally have like no critters other than like wild chickens and a couple mongoose.
Mhm.
And it was just really odd coming from Oklahoma and you're always seeing raccoons and armadillos and squirrels. They have no squirrel. There's no
No.
I went to even South Korea, after the Korean War, they have literally no critters there. There's none. And it's so odd because, they value so much just to see these little, wildlife. And I remember a little boy asking his mom on our football team in Hawaii, like, "Can you show me a picture of a squirrel?" And I was just thinking, like, I've seen so many squirrels growing up, and
They're
they
different
don't have
colored
that in
squirrels.
places.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. There's huge ones, fox squirrels, black ones,
Mhm.
and it's just really interesting. I feel like we take it for granted a little bit and some of those heavier even here in Georgia, I mean, I can't go anywhere and there's trees everywhere, there's some type of bird, something, um, yeah, and I think that kids just crave that nowadays. There's just the screen time statistics are crazy too, like, the
Yeah,
indoor statistics are crazy.
yeah,
I think just getting out and, experiencing the outdoors is much needed and
yeah,
prompts a
I
lot of
agree.
things.
If
Yeah.
you ever hear a kid that lives in the city get outside to a place where there are trees, that is one of my favorite experiences was hearing my kids from where we were to coming to a place with tons of trees, and they go, "We can actually climb a tree." And you take advan you take advantage of it when you have that moment, but missing you don't see what you're missing out on until you get into a situation where you have access to it. So it made me more create a space while my kids were younger and not as busy as they are now to get to those spots, to those areas that they can experience things if I don't have them around me. So there are a lot of women that I've talked to that you have probably talked to that don't have that in their yard. They don't have it in their city, but they might know of places just outside. And so it takes a little bit more effort, a little bit more planning. But having teenagers now and figuring out times to juggle and times to get them to do these things takes a lot of planning and a lot more creativity than
Yeah.
when they were younger. And I could just say, "Hey, we're going for a hike." And it might just be
Yeah.
to a local park that has a circle of a path that we could walk on. And so it doesn't take a whole lot
For sure.
to have those conversations. It could be just a quarter mile walk where there are trees and bushes and squirrels, and you can find tracks in those little bitty places just as you
Mhm.
can in the big places. You don't have to have access to 60 acres to experience that with your kids. You can go to your local park and you just educate yourself a little bit on
Mhm.
how to find those things. But that's the fun thing. I think we women love learning. We love
Yeah.
knowing all of the details. And I think it fed my soul a little bit to teach my kids how to do that because the things I didn't know, I was also learning alongside of them. So it created a space for me to be a kid again.
Yeah, and, we've mentioned this a couple times before. I feel like women feel like they need to be, like, like, very knowledgeable, almost an expert before we really dive into
Do
something,
something. Yeah.
and I think, you know, like you said, simple stuff. We lived in Jacksonville. We used to do, like, a little nature group with our kids, and we went to one of those little half a mile walking trails,
Mhm.
and one of the moms were like, "Here's some scrap paper, go do a bark rubbing with a crown."
Mhm.
And we were gonna learn one tree, and when we come back around this next event, you're gonna try to find that same tree at our next park, you know? And
Mhm.
so they were learning tree identification and not even realizing it, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and yeah,
And as
those
a
are
mom,
simple things.
that's not outside of
Yeah.
the realm of something that I can learn. It doesn't have to be college level knowledge in order to pass it on to your kid. You can there we have access to so many things in books and getting
Mhm.
away from the internet, but actually opening up a book to have that thought process go through. But truly, it can just be on a kindergarten level or 3rd
Yeah.
grade level and then you learn alongside of them. It doesn't have to be something that you're an expert in order
Yeah.
to teach it to your kids.
I feel like animal calling's the same thing, you know?
Mhm.
That wasn't something that I really grew up doing, and so I used to hang, like, an elk call in my, a cow call, like, on my truck, and I'd be like, "Every time I go, I'm gonna try to do, like, a couple of calls," and then my kids started asking for their own ones, you know? And
Yeah.
I have a son that can call without even using one, he just uses his mouth, he's, like, heard it so many times, and it's amazing to see what kids pick
Yeah.
up on, and they love that. They really, really do love that.
They do. I think the first time my kids heard an elk bugle um, was at a film festival that we went to, and they heard the elk, and from then on, if I was listening to something, if I was learning something and they heard it even from a different room in the house, they'd call down, "Are you looking at elk?" And it wasn't until maybe 3 years ago that I exposed them to an actual elk in person, and it all came back from all those conversations when they were little and all the sounds that they were hearing. It was like point A and point Z came together,
I love
and
that.
it just continued. It was just continuing education at that point in time, but it was fun, going through Yellowstone and seeing the elk and just being able to experience that with them. Um, where we live now, I have chickens and ducks and of course our dogs, but that has been another learning experience of how do you take care of them? What are the sounds you hear? Can you mimic the ducks out there for a duck
Mhm.
hunt? What does taking care of them, what types of foods do they eat? How do they need protection? And it goes forward into how would they do that in the wild. And I'm lucky enough to have the ducks and chickens out there. You might be able to hear them. I don't know if you can on they're going crazy right now outside. But it continues that conversation through from being in the backyard to being in the wild. It's all connected.
Yeah, I tell my kids, "You really, as a hunter, become a mini biologist." And,
You do.
you know, when you really learn and depending on where you are, you might be a great turkey hunter for Oklahoma, but then you drop you off in Eastern country, North Carolina, totally
Totally
different
different.
ballgame. I
Yeah.
hunted also, like, Nebraska, the Sandhills, Merriam's up there, totally different, you know? And so it's
Mhm.
like, I love that because 'cause you're always evolving, you're always moving
Yeah.
yourself, and it kinda all works together, but at the same time, you're like, "Wait, okay, this is how they normally act, and, you know, they might not do that at all." And so, I love that and the challenge
Mhm.
of it as somebody that's, I don't know, seasoned in that area, but then you can get pushed down to novice like that, you
Oh,
know?
in a heartbeat. I did, a Black Hills turkey hunt this year and just I had to learn ahead of time. You don't cut, you don't like, there are certain things that you just cannot do with that species. But when I hunted Rios in Texas, they said, "No, you just have to yell at them. Like, you are yelling at those hens because those hens are yelling back and they're gonna get all jealous and they're gonna come in fighting." And it's a totally different experience from Easterns here where you kinda have to flirt and you have to have this song and dance and be patient and quiet, and it's all different. I remember I hunt public land here, and I remember
Mhm.
taking my kids, both of them, when they were very
Bless you.
young,
Yeah.
in a ground blind. And
Yep.
of course, they're bickering with each other. And I'm just at some point, I was going, okay, this is going to be an educational
Yeah.
day because there's no way a deer is coming in, and let alone on public land. But
Yeah.
they learned that day what it was like to have a doe blow at them
Mm.
and the white tail
Wow.
as it disappeared. And as frustrating as it was to me, because I'm still human and I'm still a hunter and I still wanted that success of the day, I had to revamp my brain and
Mhm.
I had to redirect it into what the lesson was of the day for me and for them. Patience for me for sure. But how else do you learn what causes a doe to blow and leave? What was the result of this and why? And so those were hard lessons for me to learn alongside of my kids, but they will even still bring up that story, even though they're older now. They will still bring up that story. Oh, we learned that day what the reason was for that. Um, Getting my daughter out on a boat duck hunting and her being scared to death to pull the trigger on a 12 gauge. Um,
Mhm.
because she had been told most of her life, "Oh, you don't need to shoot a 12 gauge. It's gonna throw you off your feet. You're gonna fall backwards. It's gonna be too much. It's gonna
Oh,
throw
yeah.
you a punch." And, the boat's off. She's trying to put down a cripple, and she was scared to death, but to have somebody walk alongside of her, to have a mentor with her, to say, "This is how you do it. This is how your stance is. This is your responsibility." And to walk through that process was really important. And she pulled the trigger and got back to me and said, "I did it. Uh, Look
Oh,
what I
wow.
did." It
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily the perfect scenario of duck hunting in that moment, but it was a lesson that she learned. She also we went through, we were doing a doe conservation or a doe management hunt. So this is another conversation of late season doe management. The numbers needed to be culled down, but it's a little bit later in the season, which meant there was a possibility that the doe was going to be pregnant. So, how do you have this conversation now? How do you prepare your kid for that possibility when you're also teaching how do you clean a deer? How do you go through the process? This is the responsibility. And her doe was pregnant. And it takes it into the science side of it. Like you said, you become a
Yeah.
wildlife biologist to a certain extent because you're learning this is the part of number management. This is why it's done. And when you take it when you take the lens off of just the hunter and you put on that responsible habitat building, numbers building, making sure everybody's healthy building, then you get to see it from a different viewpoint. And that creates a well rounded hunter. That creates a
Yeah.
responsible hunter, a hunter that sees not just the take side of it, but the give side of it. And I think that those are hard lessons to walk through, not just her or a child to walk through, but me as a hunter, as an adult hunter to walk through. So,
For sure.
um, but man, the opportunities that those doors open up to create future voters
Yeah.
and the future generations that hopefully will keep the goal of management close to their hearts, that it is something that they're passionate about and they hold themselves responsible for.
Okay, a couple of things you said triggered some thoughts, but this is a really good time to take a break. Let's hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Dry Pocket, gear that stands up to the wild. Experience waterproof hunting gear and Mossy Oak's signature camo designed for every hunt. Built to be waterproof, durable, and reliable, you can trust your gear when it matters most. Stay dry, stay ready. Our products float with a watertight seal, keeping your essentials airtight and scent-free. The top seals automatically, no manual closure needed. With Dry Pocket's Mossy Oak collection, you're ready for any adventure. Gear up at drypocket.com and use promo code ASCEND for a special offer. From the marsh to the mountains, trust starts from the ground up. For over 25 years, the original Muck Boot Company has built 100% waterproof boots designed to keep hunters dry, warm, and comfortable in the toughest conditions. Our boots are made to perform as hard as you do. Stay dry, stay comfortable, and stay in the hunt with Muck Boots. 100% waterproof, built for the toughest conditions. Muck, the official boot of hunters.
All right, we're back, and I want to dive into something you said about going on the hunt with your kids and feeling let down because I feel like moms need that encouragement because I've been there. We're so
Yeah.
limited on the times. Like right now, I know I could probably count like 2 or 3 times that I know for sure that I'm gonna be able to go out to the woods this time, and one of those is gonna be a time that we're doing a family hunt, and obviously, I want that for your kids, but then like you said, like, for me, I want that for me too as, like, a hunter, and I feel like it's so
Mhm.
discouraging because more often than not, we as moms are the ones with littles following us into the woods. What encouragement can you give to moms in those moments? Because it's really hard to reset your brain. It's really hard to be like, man, this was the only time I was going to be able to hunt this month. Or, a
Yeah.
bow season passes. Now we have to go into firearm. And I practiced all year with my bow and, that didn't happen. I feel like moms just need that encouragement.
I think that no matter what the change, like what change happens, no matter what schedule change or sick kid changes things, I think that you're still moving forward, whether you feel like you've taken a step back or not. Whether you've been practicing all season for bow hunting and then you don't get to do it, you still have those hours. You still have that technique that you are working on mastering. That is still a small success. I think that I had to retrain my brain to think, okay, what are my success goals for the year? And it can't
Right.
be just harvesting an animal. What are the small goals along the way? I have this big goal, but I needed to mark out small successes throughout the season that I could tack off like, yes, I accomplished that. Yes, I accomplished that. And it didn't necessarily mean that I got the full success of a harvest in the field, but I can still look back over that season and say, look at what I did accomplish. Look at what I did step forward in. I now have mastered 25 yards with a bow versus
Yeah.
the 20 that I was at. I'm now getting them all grouped into one section consistently at 30 yards. Like those are the successes that you need to be able to mark off as a mom to see your
Yeah.
success along the way. And that's not just in hunting. That might be, hey, I've put on weight in my pack and I was able to put it, my kid grew 5 extra pounds and I've got them on my back and I've been able to go a mile longer in a walk. Those are all things that add up because you have this small amount of time with kids at home. Mine are about to be leaving. I've got about 2.5 more years and I'm going to be an empty nester. And it has been, the days are long, but the years are short. And so I need to have those successes along the way because once they are gone, my time with them is going to be a lot shorter. My time of being with them on hunts are going to be limited versus my time to be able to go and do whatever I want to do. So it is kind of redirecting your brain, allowing yourself the thoughts of dadgummit because that happens. You can have those moments of feeling it, but as long as you have the little successes also marked off, then you're going to see your progress. And I think that was important for me. I needed to be able to see progress in my journey, even though that season I might not have fulfilled the tag that I had. That was important for me to see my progress. And it's just, I still felt disappointed. I still felt
Yeah.
frustrated. I still would wake up with a sick kid with a fever and not be able to go. And there was still that frustration. But at the end of the season, I could then go back in my calendar and see, look where I look where I notched that. Look where
Yeah.
I progressed in that. Look at where I learned that extra skill to apply for later when I can get out there, and it will be important. Um, my son was with me when I first went through the whole process of field dressing all by myself, and it took way longer than it should have, but I was trying to figure out how to do it myself. It was, yes, I got a harvest, but there was the frustration of I didn't have somebody helping me. He was teeny tiny, and it took me way longer than it was. I was frustrated with myself. But the lessons that I learned in that moment, the next time I was with him by myself or I was by myself and I was doing it, when I cut my time in half because of the lessons that I learned along the way. And he got to see that. He got to see me be frustrated. It was okay to be frustrated. It was okay to have a deer walk through and not be able to take a shot. They are watching you. It's okay to have those
Yeah.
feelings, but how are you applying them for growth? How are
Yeah.
you succeeding in the small goals and showing them that's how you get to the big goal, even if it takes 3 years to get a deer on the ground? It was 3 years of
Yeah.
hunting for me before I got a deer on the ground. That's a
No,
lot of
I'm with you
frustration.
there. Yeah, I, elk hunted in Oklahoma for the last 5 years, and, um, this last year, I knew it was gonna be, like, my last chance because, we were moving, and I was probably not gonna be able to at least put in for the draw to go back this year,
Mhm.
and, I finally drew another bull tag, and the first year, I had maybe a shot, but then I decided that I didn't feel like it was an ethical shot of me. It
Mhm.
was gonna be pushing my abilities, so I didn't take the shot. And then this last year, I got really close. I called my first bull in, so that was, like, a win.
Ah,
And
yes.
but it's like Oklahoma, so there's, like, little sprigs and, like, there was no way for me to make a move on him, and he just kinda stood there for a while. He would trot into the trees, I would call, he'd come back out, and we end up getting like, he came in hot one time, and we ended up getting locked up at, like, 100 yards, and that's obviously out of bow range for me, and
Mhm.
I was just like, "Oh, like, what do I do?" Like, I cannot like, I felt like 20 minutes, like, I'm shaking, like, I can't hold the pose any
Yeah.
longer, and it didn't end in a harvest, but I was like, "Man, that experience." I called him in,
Mhm.
it worked, like, I did what I could to get in, and I was just like, "That was a win for me." Nobody saw it. Actually, my husband experienced it because he was, like, off in the distance, and he's seen me going towards it, and he was like, "I was in suspense the whole time." I was like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
me too."
Me too.
But it was a
Me too. I
win,
felt it.
and I
It's a
felt I
win.
felt, like, kinda heartbroken, but then at the same time, I felt like, "Man, all those times of me bugling and annoying my whole family paid off." Like, it
Yeah.
worked, and so, yeah, the
I
small
think that's
wins.
how journaling also might help. Like, there's plenty of
Yeah,
apps out there that you can figure out a way of doing it or just writing it down, but journaling through your journey of fishing, hunting, hiking, camping, like, whatever your goal is, journaling through it so that you can see where you took the 2 steps forward even if you had to take a step back. So you're seeing
yeah,
that progress go through is can be something that is very helpful for someone who needs a tangible, visible reminder of what
yeah,
might have grown through. Um, so, yeah, I think that that's really important for women who especially mothers, who might not be able to feel progress in a year because of responsibilities. But that's for anybody, even if you're a single woman who's in the workforce with a challenging job. That can be for anyone in the military who might have gotten called out during the season, and you just have to be able to see those small goals moving forward, even when the big goal might have gotten a step back on. But having those small goals will keep you moving forward and see that forward moving progress.
You also mentioned your daughter, and the duck story and talking about how she was able to overcome because of mentorship. And I think, we've talked about here on Ascend just creating a community for women to,
Mhm.
find encouragement and mentorship. It plays such a big deal. And like you said, the first time you had to dress the, deer without someone there, it's a scary feeling. It's like you
Yeah.
feel vulnerable. Like, how am I going to ruin this? And really, it's not that big of a deal once you find your groove and your steps because how I skin it's not how you do it, not there's a
Nope,
million ways that people do it.
there are.
Um, I just feel like that's where we find ourselves as women a little bit as we're in a vulnerable space. A lot of us are new, and mentors have made a big part of my life as well, and some of those mentors are it's not like I had, like, a grandpa, when I was little I did, but
Mm-mm.
now they're other moms. They're other ladies
Mhm.
too, and there's been amazing men along the way as well. How have you been able to you've mentored your kids and received mentorship, how is that for you now? Like, are you still feeling like you seek out mentorship friendships?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I am constantly learning new things, and I hope to never be at the end of my learning journey. So I'm always seeking somebody that's just that little step ahead of me. It doesn't have to be someone who has fulfilled the whole big gamut, of the final success. It's just seeking out people who are just ahead of you on that journey that you can ask questions to and you can learn from. Um, no, I learned how to hunt truly from women who were just a step ahead of me. That is how I learned, and it wasn't from women local to me either because I didn't really know a whole lot of people around me that hunted that were female. So it was just constant conversations with women around the world who were just that step ahead of me that I could say, "Well, how did you do that? I wonder if it would work for me. Maybe I need to find
Mhm.
another person that has a different technique that might work for me." And then you put all of these nuggets of goodness
Mhm.
together to find your own way. Because at the end of the day, we're just learning how to be respectful of the harvest that we're taking, whether it's a fish or small game, bird, or a big game animal. You're just trying to find the best way to respect the harvest, and that
Yeah.
isn't going to, like you said, look like everybody else. You have to figure out how it works for you, and that might take a lot of conversations from different people, but no, I still 100% seek, the counsel of men and women around me who are just that little step ahead. They don't have to know it all, but they might know something that I don't, and so it's just all about conversation. That's why storytelling is so awesome because you hear somebody else's story and you go, "Wait, hold on, I haven't learned that yet. How did you do it?" And and that's the lifeblood of an outdoors person, are the stories that we tell.
Yeah, tying it back to conservation is the same way
Mhm.
because, you start with picking up trash, but then you find yourself on, a DU state, a committee for a banquet, and then
Mhm.
you're on the
Yeah.
state board, and then, you're writing letters to Congress whenever you see, and you're
Mhm.
engaging, you're making reels about the RAWA Act, or, it's a
Yeah.
catalyst, but we can all start small, and I feel like when we um just get past, like, kinda like that vulnerability stage, get
Mhm.
past, we don't have to be the expert. You don't have to be, on the Congress floor talking about conservation,
No, no.
Um,
But
yeah.
your community is right there around you. Your neighbors are right there
Yeah.
around you. I've always had the mindset of learn, do, teach.
Mm.
And and so when you learn something and then you do it and then you teach it, it came from many, many years ago when I worked in healthcare, and in surgery. It was learn, do, teach. That was how you moved through what you were doing, and I just apply it to everything that I do now. But I'd take a heart out of the freezer, a deer heart out of the freezer, and all of the kids in the neighborhood would come over and we'd have a science
Yeah.
lesson. My kids are sitting at the table. My neighbor's kids are sitting at the table, and we're going through and we're learning about the valves, that hearts actually do have heartstrings, that this is the way that blood flows through to the rest of the body, and this is how blood comes back from the body into the heart and into the lungs. And just because it's a deer doesn't mean that the organs don't function the same way. Like, this is a
Yeah.
learning opportunity. And then this is
Mhm.
how you can put it on a skewer with green peppers and mushrooms
Yeah.
and onions, and you can make
Yeah.
a shish kebab out of it.
Yeah.
And they see that whole learning process through it. And that's
Mhm.
just on my street. That's not me going into Congress and lobbying. Like, this
Yeah.
is my responsibility, is helping the people around me have a conversation. That's it. Let's find common ground. Don't you love to have a clean place to play? Don't you love to learn about what you're hearing? Are you getting that birding app so that you can hear all of the different birds in your area? Like, those are the simple conversations that we don't have to have all of the rules and regulations and knowledge to speak legalese, and you might not ever feel like that you know enough to do that, but you do know enough to just sit with your neighbor and say, "Oh, did you hear that bird? What was that? Oh, somebody dropped trash in front of me. Let's go pick it up," because it's learning through behavior that you're passing it on.
Yeah.
So learn, do, teach is a big thing for me, and that's something that I pass on to my kids.
Yeah, and like you said, they're watching us. They're seeing
Oh,
what we
yeah.
are doing. And so,
Yeah.
if mom's not doing that, or if mom is doing that, I wanna do that too, or that's just
Mhm.
how the Beathards operate, like, we
Yeah.
always pick up trash, or we always,
Mhm.
um, I think that's where we start reintroducing this generation,
Mhm.
we need them. We need the next generation to be involved, like you said, for the next generation of voters to protect the
Mhm.
life we love. I want my grandkids to be able to experience it.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to be a hunter, but at least they'll have the access to do so
Mhm.
if they want to.
Yeah.
And I feel like moms are a huge catalyst to the conservation at home piece because, growing up, I grew up, in the country, and I was big on the after. Like, my dad would go to deer camp, bring the deer back, and then we would, butcher it. My mom grew up in a big hunting family. My grandpa always would, let's go shoot some rabbits. He was doing the shooting, and then I would help him clean it.
Mhm.
Um, but now we have more moms, and I actually wrote
Mhm.
about this on Hook and Barrel with Dan, talking about how he's seeing women doing more in the outdoors. They're really the ones that are asking the questions, that are bringing the whole
Yeah.
family with them, to where the men are
Yes.
kinda like, "This is my vacation, and, it's vacation time," and he's like, and they come expecting the vacation. Women come, "What are you gonna teach me? I expect to harvest. We're gonna do
Mhm.
this. I wanna be part of all of it?" And he said more often than not, when it comes to cleaning, he was like, "That's a service that the guys can provide." He said, "Women are always like, 'No, I wanna do it.' Like,
I can do it.
give me a knife
Yeah.
too." And I
Yeah.
love to see that. I'm like, "Man, yes, women," but I love that.
But no,
And
I do.
so
I think that
yeah,
I think you see more kids getting into this right now when the moms do. And there's
yeah,
nothing against, I still love to get out and have alone time and have me time
mhm,
and be able to just be in my thoughts, but I also know that if I don't take them, I might not get out as much as if I do take them. And it's 5 hours maybe. It might be just 1 hour, but it's time that I am sitting parallel with them. We might be learning something together. We might be just having a whisper conversation, but there's no screen. There is one-on-one time. You can never get back. You can't get it back. And it is so important and valuable. And I look back as my kids are becoming adults, I look back and I go, golly, I'm glad. I'm glad that deer blew at that moment. I'm glad that we had that moment, as frustrating as it was back then. I'm glad we had that moment because I learned alongside of them. And we had that time together and we had the conversations and we sat and had snacks and looked through binoculars and just had those moments where we all learned, and I'd never change it. I wouldn't have hoped for a deer to come in a harvest. I value that moment that could have been a negative thing in somebody's eyes and was a little bit at the moment, but it was valuable to me and it still is.
And I can attest to that too. My kids remember every hunt that we went on. Like, my son will be like, "Mom, remember when we were hunting in Georgia once and a raccoon came out. We were hunting hogs to the feeder, and my son dropped the thermocell, and the raccoon just like looked at us, and I had to climb down the ladder, get the thermocell, go back up because we were getting ate up by mosquitoes." And he still laughs about that, and I'm like, "Yeah, I remember that." And we didn't get a harvest that day, but he still remembers that hunt, and he thinks it's hilarious because the raccoon literally didn't leave, and like watched us crawl back up there and was like, "Yeah, I live in this tree and I eat all this all the time." But and my daughter, we seen a coyote one time, and so we're like, "Well, aren't we hunting deer?" And I'm like, "Well, predator management's important." And we got to talk about predator management and the important for that. And those are little times that they will never forget, and I'm glad to, like you said, for those moments. I'm in the stage of all my kids are that preteenish area. Well, my baby's 5, but a lot of the bulk of my kids, and I feel like the rope is getting shorter, and I know my husband's like, "In just like this many years, we're not gonna have no kids in the house." And I'm like, "I know." Yeah. And so, in the moment you're frustrated, but it's so worth it whenever you have that time with them. Yeah.
It is true.
Well,
My daughter
Amy,
looks back. Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
My daughter says now, even if we go on a duck hunt or if we go on a turkey hunt and she says, I love these times that we get just you and me. So the purpose of that trip might not even be about the hunt. It might be that your kids just need to walk alongside of you and to walk in your footsteps just for an hour. And it just goes back to value for me with them.
Yeah. Priceless. It really
Yeah.
is. And you can't even, as a mom, it's just I cherish those times. I really, really do.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, Amy, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and reminding us that conservation doesn't have to start with big policies, but at home in our street, sharing deer heart. Can you share with our viewers where they can find you and so they can connect?
Sure thing. You can find me on Instagram. It's Amy Hall Hunter. Or you can take a listen if you want to listen to Her Wild Outdoors is a podcast that I did for a couple of years, and I learned a lot of good tips and tricks along the way. And then you can always email me at herwildoutdoors@gmail.com if you need anything. I would love to be a sounding board or just be that step ahead for you if you need it.
Well, thank everybody for listening. And remember, conservation doesn't have to be big lobbying, but it can start small at home.
Thank you for listening to the Ascend podcast. New every week, the conservation-driven podcast one week and our adventure video series the next. Watch the Ascend Adventure episodes on the Ducks Unlimited YouTube channel. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, follow your outdoor story wherever it leads you. Ascend.